I never thought I'd end up in a war with my Homeowners Association. But when I found Brenda Collins rummaging through my private storage unit like it was her personal shopping mall, I knew my peaceful suburban life in Phoenix, Arizona was about to explode. Let me back up. My name is Travis Kellerman, and I bought my house in the Suncrest Meadows community about 3 years ago. It's one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every third house looks identical, and everyone pretends to love their perfectly manicured lawns. The HOA seemed reasonable at first, just monthly meetings and reminders about trash can placement. I could handle that. What I couldn't handle was coming home from my job as a software engineer one scorching Tuesday afternoon to find the lock on my storage unit cut clean off. The storage unit sat at the back corner of my property, a solid 12 by 16-foot structure I'd built myself the summer after moving in. I'd gotten all the proper permits, jumped through every hoop, and made sure it matched the community's ridiculous beige and tan color scheme. That unit was mine. I paid for it, I built it, and I filled it with my camping gear, seasonal decorations, and boxes of old college textbooks I couldn't bear to throw away. So when I pulled into my driveway that day and noticed the storage unit door hanging open, my first thought was burglary. My heart pounded as I grabbed the tire iron from my trunk and approached cautiously. But instead of finding some meth head stealing my stuff, I found something far more infuriating: pool supplies. Hundreds of dollars worth of chlorine tablets, pool noodles, lane dividers, cleaning equipment, and filtration systems, all stacked neatly where my camping gear should have been. My belongings had been shoved into a tiny corner, crammed together without any care for organization or damage. "What the hell?" I muttered, pulling out my phone to call the police. Before I could dial, a sharp voice cut through the afternoon heat. "Oh good, you're home." I turned to see Brenda Collins marching across my lawn in her signature khaki Capris, and a visor that screamed, "Let me speak to your manager." She was the HOA president, a position she'd held for the past 7 years with an iron fist and zero sense of boundaries. "Brenda, what is this?" I gestured at my violated storage unit. She smiled, that condescending smile I'd grown to despise. "We needed somewhere to store the community pool supplies during the renovation. Your unit was perfect. Don't worry, we moved your things very carefully." My jaw actually dropped. "You broke into my private property." "Broke in?" She laughed like I'd told a joke. "Travis, everything in this community belongs to the HOA in a sense. We're all one big family here. Besides, the community pool serves everyone. Your little camping hobby can wait a few months." A few months. The tire iron felt heavy in my hand. I set it down before I did something stupid. "Brenda, this is theft. This is breaking and entering. You can't just—" "I can, and I did." Her smile never wavered. "Check your HOA bylaws, Section 12, Paragraph 4. The association reserves the right to utilize private property for community purposes in emergency situations." This isn't an emergency, and even if that clause exists, which I doubt, you need permission. You need paperwork. I need nothing from you, Travis." Her voice turned cold. "The pool renovation company needed the old supplies removed immediately, and every other storage option was full. Your unit was empty most of the time anyway. I've been watching, and you barely use it." The fact that she'd been monitoring my storage unit usage made my skin crawl. "Get your stuff out of my unit by tomorrow, or I'm calling the police." Brenda's expression hardened. "Do that, and you'll find yourself in violation of Code 17, which prohibits uncooperative behavior that hinders community initiatives. That's a $500 fine per day, Travis." "Per day." She turned and walked away, leaving me standing there furious and incredulous. I immediately went inside and pulled up the HOA bylaws on my laptop. I'd signed them when I bought the house, but, like most people, hadn't read every single word of the dense legal document. 3 hours later, after reading through 72 pages of the most convoluted nonsense ever written, I found what Brenda had referenced. Section 12, Paragraph 4 did exist, but she'd twisted its meaning completely. The clause allowed the HOA to access private property in genuine emergencies like fire, flood, or structural damage that posed a threat to other homes. Needing pool supply storage absolutely did not qualify. I took screenshots, saved the document, and started building my case. But I also knew from horror stories I'd read online that fighting an HOA was like fighting the government, except with pettier people and more aggressive lawyers. The next morning, I called a locksmith. If Brenda wanted to play games, I'd play too. By noon, my storage unit had a brand new high-security lock, the kind that cost $200, and came with keys that couldn't be duplicated without special authorization. I also installed a security camera pointed directly at the unit's door, hidden in the eaves of my house where it wouldn't be obvious. Then, I did something that felt almost too bold. I opened the storage unit, loaded every single pool supply into my pickup truck, drove to the community pool and dumped it all on the pool deck. The renovation workers looked confused, but I just smiled and said, "HOA President's orders. She'll explain everything." I drove home feeling victorious. That feeling lasted about 4 hours. Brenda showed up at my door with 2 other HOA board members, Patricia Hammond, the treasurer, and Susan Martinez, the secretary. All 3 looked ready for blood. "You cannot remove community property," Brenda shrieked before I'd even fully opened the door. "Community property." I leaned against the door frame. Funny, because I didn't see any community vote on purchasing pool supplies. I didn't see any community meeting about storage solutions. What I saw was my private property being used without permission. Patricia stepped forward, clutching a leather folder like a weapon. "Mr. Kellerman, you're creating a hostile situation. The pool renovation is a $15,000 project funded by our HOA fees. Your obstruction could delay completion and cost us additional money." "Not my problem," I said calmly. "You want to store things. Rent a storage unit like normal people." Susan, who always seemed like the reasonable one of the group, spoke softly. "Travis, please, we've already looked into storage facilities. The closest one with availability is 30 miles away, and the monthly cost would drain our reserve fund. We just need a few months." Then you should have asked me nicely instead of breaking my lock and stealing my space. Brenda's face turned an impressive shade of red. "Fine. We're asking now. May we please use your storage unit?" "No." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Patricia made a strangled noise. Susan looked disappointed. Brenda looked murderous. "You're making a terrible mistake," Brenda said quietly. "A terrible, expensive mistake." They left, and I knew the war had truly begun. The first fine arrived 2 days later. $500 for unauthorized dumping of community property. I contested it immediately with a detailed email explaining that the property was never authorized to be in my storage unit in the first place. The HOA board denied my appeal within an hour. The second fine came 3 days after that. $750 for improper storage unit modifications without HOA approval. They claimed my new lock violated community aesthetics because it was silver instead of bronze. Never mind that the lock was inside the unit and invisible from the street. I contested that one too. Denied. The third fine was my favorite. $1,000 for creating a hostile living environment through uncooperative behavior. Apparently, refusing to let people steal from you counted as hostility in Brenda's world. Each appeal I filed was denied faster than the last. I was hemorrhaging money I didn't have, and Brenda knew it. She was trying to force me into compliance through financial warfare, and it was working. My savings account was crying. That's when I called my lawyer friend, Marcus Webb. We'd gone to college together, and he now ran a small practice in Scottsdale specializing in property law. I'd been to his wedding, met his kids, and helped him move into his current office. If anyone would give me straight answers, it was Marcus. "They're doing what?" Marcus asked when I explained the situation over lunch at a diner near his office. "Using my storage unit, and now fining me for trying to stop them." Marcus sat back, his burger forgotten. "Travis, that's not just inappropriate, that's illegal. The HOA can't commandeer private property, emergency clause or not. And those fines are retaliatory, which violates Arizona HOA regulations. Can you help me fight this?" He hesitated, and my heart sank. "I can, but HOA cases are messy. They take months, sometimes years. And even when you win, enforcement is complicated. These boards have lawyers who specialize in dragging things out. So I'm screwed." "Not necessarily." Marcus leaned forward. "Have you documented everything? Photos, emails, the original lock they cut?" "I kept the cut lock. And I installed a security camera." "Smart. Here's what we do. File a police report for theft and property damage. Even if they don't press charges immediately, it creates an official record. Then we send the HOA a cease and desist letter. If they keep harassing you, we file a lawsuit for damages and a restraining order against Brenda personally." The plan sounded good, but expensive. Marcus saw my face and sighed. "Look, I'll do this one as a favor. You helped me move 3 floors worth of file cabinets without complaining. I owe you. Just pay the filing fees and we're square." Relief washed over me. "Thank you, Marcus. Seriously." We spent the next hour going over every detail. Marcus took copies of all the fines, the HOA bylaws, photos of my storage unit before and after, and the cut lock itself. He looked more excited than I'd seen him in years. "I hate abusive HOAs," he admitted. "They give the decent ones a bad name. This Brenda woman sounds like a piece of work. You have no idea." I filed the police report that afternoon at the Phoenix Police Department's North Precinct. The officer who took my statement, a tired-looking guy named Officer Ramirez, listened carefully and took photos of the cut lock. "HOA dispute?" he asked. "Is it that obvious? We get these calls more than you'd think. Legally, this is breaking and entering plus theft of property access. But prosecutors rarely pursue HOA cases unless there's violence or fraud involved. They're considered civil matters. So nothing will happen." Officer Ramirez handed me the report number. "I didn't say that. This report is official documentation. If things escalate, you have proof you tried to resolve things properly. Also, sometimes just having a police report number scares HOA boards straight. They don't want legal attention." I thanked him and left, hoping he was right about the scare tactic. Marcus sent the cease and desist letter via certified mail the next day. It was beautiful, full of legal language that boiled down to, "Stop harassing Travis or face serious consequences." We sent copies to Brenda, Patricia, Susan, and the HOA's property management company, a corporate outfit called Summit Community Services. The response came faster than expected. Not from Brenda, but from a lawyer named Richard Ashford representing the HOA. His letter was polite but firm. The HOA stood by its actions, considered all fines valid, and suggested I pay immediately to avoid further penalties. Marcus read the letter and laughed. "They're bluffing." This guy's a real estate attorney, not an HOA specialist. He's probably friends with someone on the board and doing them a favor. So what now? Now we file suit. Small claims court, property damage and theft. You're asking for the cost of your original lock, compensation for the unauthorized use of your storage space, and dismissal of all fines. We'll also request a temporary restraining order preventing them from accessing your property. The paperwork was filed within the week. Our court date was set for 6 weeks out, which felt like an eternity, but was apparently fast for the Maricopa County court system. In the meantime, Brenda escalated. I came home from work one Wednesday evening to find a notice taped to my door. The HOA was calling an emergency meeting to discuss member Travis Kellerman's pattern of uncooperative and dangerous behavior. The meeting was scheduled for that Saturday at the community center. Dangerous behavior. The woman had lost her mind. I attended the meeting with Marcus by my side. About 30 neighbors showed up, most looking confused about why they'd been summoned. The community center was a bland room with folding chairs and fluorescent lights that hummed like angry bees. Brenda stood at the front with her board, looking triumphant. When she saw Marcus, her expression flickered with uncertainty before settling back into smugness. "Thank you all for coming," Brenda began. "We're here to address a serious situation involving Travis Kellerman, who has repeatedly obstructed community initiatives and created a hostile environment." Several neighbors glanced at me. I recognized most of them, though I'd never been particularly social. The guy to my left, Derek something, gave me a sympathetic look. Brenda launched into a dramatic retelling of events, painting herself as the victim and me as some sort of neighborhood villain. According to her version, I'd viciously dumped pool supplies, installed fortress-like security measures, and threatened board members. "That's not," I started to say, but Marcus put a hand on my arm. "Let her talk," he whispered. "She's digging her own grave." Brenda continued for another 10 minutes, getting more theatrical with each sentence. Finally, she concluded. "Therefore, the board proposes a special assessment vote. Mr. Kellerman will pay a $5,000 fine for his behavior or face immediate foreclosure proceedings on his home." The room exploded with noise. Neighbors started talking over each other, some shocked, others confused. The word foreclosure had weight, and everyone knew it. Marcus stood up, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm Marcus Webb, Mr. Kellerman's attorney. What, miss? Collins just proposed is illegal on multiple levels. You cannot foreclose on a home over disputed fines. You cannot hold a vote to punish a specific member without proper notice and due process. And you certainly cannot make threats in a public forum." Brenda's face went white, then red. "Who are you two? I'm a property attorney with 15 years of experience, and I'm recording this meeting." Marcus held up his phone. "Everything said here is documented. Now, would you like to explain to these people what really happened? Or should I?" The room went silent. Every eye turned to Marcus, then to Brenda, then back again like watching a tennis match. Marcus didn't wait for permission. He laid out the facts clearly and calmly. "The HOA broke into my storage unit, the fines were retaliatory, and the emergency clause had been misapplied." He cited specific Arizona statutes and HOA regulations that Brenda had violated. When he finished, the neighbors started murmuring again, but the tone had shifted. Derek stood up. "Hold on. Brenda, you broke his lock. Why didn't you just ask him?" Patricia jumped in to defend Brenda. "We were in a bind. The pool renovation required immediate action, so rent a storage unit," someone else called out. A woman I didn't recognize added, "Yeah, we've got reserve funds for exactly this kind of thing." The meeting devolved into chaos. Neighbors argued with board members. Susan looked mortified. Brenda kept trying to regain control but failing. Finally, she declared the meeting adjourned and stormed out with Patricia following. As people filed out, several neighbors approached me. Derek shook my hand. "That's messed up, man." I had no idea Brenda was pulling stuff like this. Others echoed the sentiment. A few asked if I needed anything or wanted to grab coffee sometime. The community, it turned out, wasn't as united behind Brenda as she'd thought. Marcus and I walked to our cars feeling optimistic. "That went well," he said. "You've got neighbors on your side now, that matters." "Think Brenda will back down?" "No, but she's going to be more careful." He was half right. Brenda didn't back down, but she definitely didn't become more careful. The following Tuesday, I woke up to find my storage unit door open again. Not broken this time, just open. The new lock was intact, but the door itself had been pried open from the hinges. And inside, empty. Completely empty. Every pool supply was gone, but so were my belongings. My camping gear, decorations, boxes of books, all of it vanished. I immediately checked the security camera footage on my phone. The video showed 3 men I didn't recognize arriving at 2 in the morning in an unmarked van. They spent 45 minutes carefully removing the door without touching the lock, loading everything into the van and driving away. The license plate was clearly visible. I called Marcus first, then the police. Officer Ramirez showed up again, looking even more tired than before. "Mr. Kellerman, we meet again." Not how I wanted to start my morning. He examined the door, took photos, and watched the security footage. When the license plate came into view, he paused the video and wrote down the number. "That's good evidence. I'll run the plate and get a statement from you." The plate came back registered to Summit Community Services, the HOA's property management company, which meant Brenda hadn't just stolen from me again, she'd used the HOA's resources to do it. "This changes things," Officer Ramirez said. "This isn't neighbors having a dispute anymore. This is a company engaging in systematic theft. I'm going to recommend the Detective Bureau take a look." Hope flickered in my chest. "Really? Can't promise anything, but yeah. You've got video evidence, a pattern of behavior, and now a commercial entity involved. That gets attention." He filed the report and left. I called Marcus with the update. "They're idiots," Marcus said, laughing. "Beautiful, stupid idiots. They just handed us everything we need." I'm amending our lawsuit to include Summit Community Services and increasing the damages. Also filing a motion for immediate relief. What does that mean? It means we ask the judge to order them to return your property immediately before the trial. With that video, we'll probably get it. The motion was filed that afternoon. Our court date was still 4 weeks away, but the emergency motion got us in front of a judge within a week. Judge Raymond Kowalski was a stern-looking man in his 60s who read through our filing with increasing disbelief. Brenda, Patricia, and a lawyer from Summit Community Services sat on the other side of the courtroom looking smug. Their smugness evaporated when Marcus played the security video on the courtroom's display screen. "Your Honor," Marcus began, "the defendants have systematically harassed my client, stolen his property twice, and caused several $1,000s in damages. We're requesting immediate return of all property and a temporary restraining order." The Summit lawyer, a young woman named Jessica Chen, stood quickly. "Your Honor, this is a simple HOA dispute. Mr. Kellerman has repeatedly violated community rules and Miss Chen," Judge Kowalski interrupted. "I just watched video of people removing a door from its hinges at 2 in the morning. What part of that is a simple dispute? The property was being stored in a community-owned space. The storage unit is on Mr. Kellerman's private property, correct?" Jessica Chen faltered. "Yes, but then it's his property. Do you have documentation showing Mr. Kellerman agreed to let the HOA use this space? No, Your Honor, but the bylaws. I've read the bylaws, Miss Chen. The emergency clause does not apply here. Now, where is Mr. Kellerman's property currently located? Brenda whispered something to Jessica Chen, who reluctantly answered. In storage at Summit Community Services' main facility in Temp. Judge Kowalski removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. You stole a man's belongings, moved them to your company's facility, and thought this was appropriate. We were holding them for safekeeping. You were stealing. There's video evidence of theft. Miss Chen, your clients are lucky I'm only issuing a civil order right now. Here's what's going to happen. Summit Community Services will return every single item to Mr. Kellerman within 48 hours. You will pay for any damages. You will not contact Mr. Kellerman, approach his property, or levy any additional fines pending the full hearing. If you violate this order, I'll hold you in contempt and refer this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Am I clear? Jessica Chen nodded mutely. Brenda looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. Patricia was staring at the floor. Motion granted. Bailiff, please ensure, Miss Chen has a copy of this order. We're adjourned. Marcus and I left the courtroom trying not to celebrate too obviously. Once outside, we high-fived like kids. That was beautiful, I said. Did you see Brenda's face? Priceless. Judge Kowalski doesn't mess around. They'll return your stuff, guaranteed. They did, but not gracefully. 2 days later, a Summit Community Services truck pulled up, and 2 workers began unloading my belongings onto my driveway, not into the storage unit, onto the driveway. They literally dumped everything in a pile and drove away. My camping tent was torn. Several boxes were crushed. My sleeping bag had a suspicious stain on it. I documented everything with photos and videos, then spent 3 hours sorting through the mess. The damages totaled about $1,500 in ruined gear and supplies. Marcus added it to the lawsuit. 3 weeks until the trial, and Brenda went quiet. No fines, no notices, no surprise visits. It was eerie. I knew she was planning something, but what? The answer came from an unexpected source. Susan Martinez, the HOA secretary, showed up at my door on a Sunday morning looking nervous. Travis, can we talk? Privately, I let her in. Offering coffee, she declined. She sat on my couch fidgeting with her purse. I'm resigning from the board, she said finally. I can't be part of this anymore. What Brenda's doing is wrong, and I should have spoken up sooner. Okay, why are you telling me? Because you need to know what she's planning. Susan leaned forward. Brenda's obsessed with winning this lawsuit. She's convinced the community will turn on her if she loses. So she's been digging through every rule, every bylaw, every community regulation, trying to find something to nail you with. And she found something, or thinks she did. Your storage unit, the one you built. Brenda claims you never got HOA approval for the construction, just the city permit. There's a rule that any structure over 100 square feet requires board approval before building. My stomach dropped. I submitted the plans to the HOA. I remember filling out the forms. Do you have copies? I thought back 3 years. I don't know. Everything was digital through the old management company. The old management company that went bankrupt and closed, Susan said. Brenda's counting on you not having proof. She's going to argue that your entire storage unit is an unauthorized structure and demand you tear it down. That's insane. That's Brenda. Look, I have copies of board meeting minutes going back 5 years in my personal files. I can't promise your approval is in there, but I can look. Do you remember when you submitted the plans? Early summer 3 years ago. June, maybe? Susan nodded. I'll look tonight and call you tomorrow. If I find proof, I'll testify on your behalf. I'm done protecting Brenda." She left, and I immediately started searching my email archives. 3 years of emails was a lot to dig through, but I was motivated. Finally, at 2 in the morning, I found it. A confirmation email from the old management company, Southwestern Community Management, acknowledging receipt of my storage unit plans. The email said approval would be granted within 30 days unless I heard otherwise. I never heard otherwise. I'd assumed approval was automatic. Now that assumption might bite me. I forwarded the email to Marcus with a detailed explanation. He called me at 8 the next morning. "This is good, but not definitive. The email says they received your plans, not that they approved them. Did you ever get an actual approval letter?" "I don't think so. I just assumed. Assumptions don't hold up in court, Travis. But this email shows good faith on your part. You followed proper procedure. The fact that the management company failed to respond isn't your fault. What about Susan's meeting minutes? If she finds proof the board discussed and approved your plans, that's golden. Let's hope she comes through." Susan called that evening. She'd found something, but not quite what we'd hoped. The June meeting minutes mentioned my storage unit submission in passing. Kellerman storage unit plans received refer to architectural committee. Nothing about approval or denial. But here's the thing, Susan added. We haven't had an architectural committee in 6 years. It dissolved due to lack of volunteers. So anything referred to that committee just sat in limbo. There was no process for approval after that. Marcus, on speakerphone, jumped in. "That's actually perfect. If the HOA had no functioning approval process, they can't penalize residents for lack of approval. They failed to maintain required infrastructure." "Will that argument work?" I asked. "It should. Especially combined with your email showing good faith effort. You did everything right." The HOA dropped the ball. The trial date finally arrived on a warm Friday morning in March. Maricopa County Superior Court was busy, filled with people waiting for various civil cases. Marcus and I sat outside the courtroom reviewing our strategy. Remember, stay calm. Answer questions directly. Don't let them rattle you. What if Brenda goes off script? Then she hangs herself. Trust the process, Travis. We were called into Judge Kowalski's courtroom at 10:30. Brenda sat with Patricia, Jessica Chen, and another man I didn't recognize. Susan was there too, on our side of the courtroom. She gave me a supportive nod. Judge Kowalski reviewed the case file, then looked up. "This is a civil suit regarding HOA actions, property damage, and retaliatory fines. Mr. Webb, you're representing the plaintiff." "Yes, Your Honor." "Miss Chen, you're representing the HOA and Summit Community Services." "Yes, Your Honor." "Excellent. Mr. Webb, present your case." Marcus stood and methodically laid out everything. The initial break-in, the fines, the second theft, the damages. He presented photos, videos, the cut lock, emails, police reports, and receipts. It took almost an hour, but by the end, the timeline was crystal clear. Judge Kowalski took notes throughout. When Marcus finished, the judge turned to Jessica Chen. "Miss Chen, your defense." Jessica stood, looking less confident than during our last appearance. "Your Honor, the HOA acted within its rights as outlined in the community bylaws. Mr. Kellerman's storage unit was built without proper approval, making it an unauthorized structure. The HOA had legitimate reasons to access the space. You have proof the storage unit lacked approval. Mr. Kellerman cannot produce an approval letter. Can you produce a denial letter?" Jessica hesitated. "No, Your Honor, but then by what standard are you claiming it's unauthorized?" Marcus stood. "Your Honor, if I may, We have documentation showing Mr. Kellerman submitted his plans to the HOA's management company and received confirmation of receipt. The HOA had 30 days to respond per its own bylaws. They never did. Additionally, Miss Susan Martinez, former HOA secretary, will testify that the HOA's architectural committee was non-functional at the time, creating a procedural failure on the HOA's part. Judge Kowalski looked interested. Miss Martinez is here. Susan stood nervously. Yes, Your Honor. Please approach for testimony. Susan was sworn in and took the witness stand. Marcus questioned her gently, establishing her role with the HOA and her knowledge of the approval process. She confirmed everything. The committee was defunct, my plans were received, and no proper approval or denial process existed. Miss Martinez, why did you resign from the board? Marcus asked. Because I couldn't support President Collins' actions anymore. What happened to Mr. Kellerman was wrong. The board has been operating outside proper procedures for years, and I couldn't be part of it. Jessica Chen tried to discredit Susan during cross-examination, suggesting she was biased or had ulterior motives, but Susan remained calm and consistent. Her testimony was damning. Judge Kowalski called a brief recess, then returned with his decision. I've heard enough. The evidence clearly shows the HOA violated Mr. Kellerman's property rights through unauthorized entry, theft, and retaliatory actions. The storage unit approval issue is irrelevant given the HOA's procedural failures. Mr. Kellerman acted in good faith. The HOA did not. He listed his orders. All fines dismissed. HOA to pay $1,500 in property damages, an additional $5,000 in punitive damages for the retaliatory actions, and all legal fees. He also issued a permanent injunction preventing the HOA from accessing my property without written permission and proper notice. Furthermore, Judge Kowalski continued, I'm troubled by the conduct of Summit Community Services. Using company resources to remove personal property in the middle of the night goes beyond poor judgment. I'm referring this matter to the Attorney General's office for review of potential criminal conduct. Brenda made a choking sound. Patricia had gone pale. Jessica Chen looked defeated. This case is closed. Defendant has 30 days to comply with all orders. Court adjourned. Marcus and I stood as the judge left. Susan came over immediately. Thank you for having the courage to testify, I told her. It was the right thing to do. I should have done it sooner. She glanced at Brenda, who was having an intense, whispered argument with Jessica Chen. I think you just ended her reign as HOA president. She was right. Word of the lawsuit outcome spread through the neighborhood within hours. By the next week, a petition was circulating calling for Brenda's resignation and a complete board restructuring. I didn't sign it, figuring I'd done enough damage to Brenda's reputation already. The HOA paid the damages and legal fees within 2 weeks, probably to avoid further legal complications. My bank account recovered nicely. I fixed my storage unit door, added a second security camera, and finally felt safe on my own property again. But the story wasn't quite over. 2 months after the trial, I got a call from a Detective Sarah Morrison with the Phoenix Police Department. Mr. Kellerman, I'm investigating the complaint filed by Judge Kowalski regarding Summit Community Services. Do you have time to answer some questions? We met at a coffee shop in Scottsdale. Detective Morrison was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who took detailed notes as I recounted everything. The Attorney General is looking at potential fraud charges, she explained. Your case isn't the only complaint against Summit. They've been accused of misappropriating HOA funds, kickback schemes with contractors, and using intimidation tactics against homeowners. Your video evidence of the nighttime removal is crucial. Whatever I can do to help. We may need you to testify before a grand jury. Would you be willing? Absolutely. The investigation took months, but the results were worth it. Summit Community Services was charged with multiple counts of fraud, theft, and racketeering. Several executives were arrested. The company eventually pleaded guilty to avoid trial, paying massive fines and restitution to affected homeowners. Brenda wasn't charged criminally, but the civil lawsuits piled up. Turns out she'd been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom for years, approving expensive contracts with companies that gave her kickbacks, ignoring proper bidding procedures, and using HOA funds for personal expenses. She resigned from the board in disgrace and moved out of the neighborhood within 6 months. Patricia and the other board members claimed ignorance, and maybe some of them were genuinely clueless. But the damage was done. The HOA hired a professional management company, rewrote the bylaws with actual legal oversight, and implemented transparency measures. Monthly meetings became actual discussions instead of Brenda's personal dictatorships. Derek, my neighbor who'd spoken up at that chaotic meeting, ended up running for HOA president in the special election. He won easily, running on a platform of common sense and respecting homeowner rights. I even voted for him. Life in Suncrest Meadows became surprisingly pleasant. Without Brenda's constant surveillance and nitpicking, people relaxed. Lawns were still maintained, but nobody freaked out if your trash cans stayed out an extra hour. The pool renovation finally finished, funded properly without stealing storage space. I became friendly with several neighbors, joining a weekly poker game and actually attending community events. Susan started a book club that met at the community center. The neighborhood felt like an actual community instead of a prison with beige paint. My storage unit became a running joke. People would ask if I'd considered renting it out to the HOA, and I'd laugh and say the rates were too high. Someone even made a fake sign reading Kellerman Storage, "No HOAs allowed," as a gag gift at the neighborhood barbecue. Marcus and I stayed close friends. I helped him with another HOA case a year later, testifying as an expert witness on board overreach. That homeowner won too, and Marcus started specializing in HOA defense. He said my case had opened his eyes to how predatory some boards could be. The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about standing up to bullies, even when they have official titles and legal-sounding threats. Brenda had counted on me being intimidated, backing down, accepting her authority. She'd done it to dozens of homeowners before me, grinding them down through fines and harassment until they complied. But I'd had the resources to fight back. A lawyer friend, documentation skills from my tech job, and the stubbornness to see it through. Not everyone has those advantages, which is why people like Brenda often get away with their abuses for years. I thought about all the homeowners who'd suffered under Brenda's rule before me. How many had paid unjust fines? How many had been bullied into compliance? How many had even lost their homes because they couldn't afford the escalating penalties? The Attorney General's investigation revealed some of those stories. One elderly couple had been foreclosed on after refusing to cut down a tree Brenda deemed aesthetically unpleasing. A single mother had paid over $10,000 in fines for minor violations, like having the wrong shade of curtains visible from outside. The stories were heartbreaking and infuriating. Summit Community Services settlement included a fund to compensate victims of their fraudulent practices. I didn't qualify since I'd already been made whole through the lawsuit, but dozens of other families received checks. It wasn't enough to undo all the damage, but it helped. One afternoon about a year after everything settled, I was organizing my storage unit when a car pulled into my driveway. I tensed automatically, old habits from the Brenda era, but it was just a family I'd seen around the neighborhood, the Johnsons, looking nervous. Mr. Johnson got out hesitantly. "Travis, sorry to bother you. I'm Michael Johnson. We live over on Maple Street. Sure, I've seen you guys around." "What's up?" "We're having an issue with the new management company. Nothing like what happened with you and Brenda, but they're trying to fine us for a play structure in our backyard. We have 3 kids under 8 and the play structure is totally within code, but they're saying it violates some aesthetic rule. We don't know what to do." I smiled. "Have you talked to Derek? He's the board president now. We tried, but he's out of town for 2 weeks. The management company is saying we need to remove the structure within 10 days or face fines." "You know what? Let me make some calls." I contacted Marcus, who agreed to send a quick cease and desist letter to the management company for free. I also emailed Derek with a heads up about the situation. The management company backed down within 48 hours. The Johnsons were incredibly grateful, bringing over a homemade pie and offering to help with anything I needed. I downplayed my role, but word spread. Apparently, I'd become the neighborhood's go-to person for HOA disputes. It was a weird legacy from the whole ordeal, but I didn't mind helping people navigate the system. I'd learned the hard way how to fight back properly, and sharing that knowledge felt good. Derek and I occasionally joked about me running for the HOA board, but I always declined. I'd had enough of HOA politics to last a lifetime. I was happy being a regular homeowner who attended meetings occasionally and voted on important issues. My storage unit became exactly what it was supposed to be: a place for my camping gear, holiday decorations, and boxes of college memories. Nobody tried to break into it, commandeer it, or fine me for its existence. Revolutionary concept, right? The security cameras stayed up though. Some paranoia is healthy. I ran into Brenda exactly once after she moved out at a grocery store in Temp. We locked eyes across the produce section. She looked older, tired, diminished. For a moment, I wondered if I should say something. Maybe gloat a little, or at least acknowledge the absurdity of our suburban warfare. But then she quickly turned and walked away, pushing her cart toward the exit without getting whatever she'd come for. That felt like victory enough. Later that evening, sitting on my back patio with a beer and watching the Arizona sunset paint the sky orange and purple, I reflected on the whole insane experience. A simple storage unit had nearly cost me thousands of dollars, months of stress, and my peace of mind. All because one woman with too much power and zero accountability decided rules didn't apply to her. But it had also shown me the importance of community, the value of standing up for yourself, and the fact that bullies eventually face consequences. Brenda's downfall hadn't been instant or easy, but it had been thorough. She'd lost her position, her reputation, her home, and her sense of control. All the things she'd valued most. Meanwhile, I still had my house, my storage unit, my camping gear, and a neighborhood full of people who'd learned from the experience. The new HOA board actually followed rules, treated residents with respect, and made decisions transparently. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional and fair. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Board meeting next week. Pool heater is broken. Please tell me you don't have a spare storage unit we can use for the repair equipment." I laughed and texted back. "Rental rates start at $10,000 per day. Fair enough. See you at the meeting." "I'll be there." And I was. Because that's what being part of a community means: showing up, participating, and making sure people like Brenda don't get the chance to turn a neighborhood into their personal kingdom. The battle for my storage unit had taught me that the price of a peaceful community is eternal vigilance, or at least showing up to monthly meetings. My storage unit sat peacefully at the back of my property, its new lock gleaming in the Arizona sun, its contents exactly what I'd put there. Sometimes the simplest victories are the sweetest ones. Nobody was going to take my space again, literally or figuratively. I'd made sure of that. The whole experience made me appreciate the boring, uneventful days when the most dramatic thing happening was choosing what to make for dinner or deciding which camping trip to plan next. Those kinds of problems were manageable, solvable, and didn't require lawyers or police reports. But I also knew that if pushed, I could fight back effectively. That knowledge was empowering. Brenda had tried to make me feel small and powerless, but instead, she taught me exactly how strong I could be when defending what was mine. As the sun finished setting and the neighborhood lights began flickering on one by one, I raised my beer in a silent toast. To property rights, to good lawyers, to honest neighbors, and to storage units that stayed exactly where they belonged under their owner's control. The end of my war with the HOA wasn't dramatic. No final showdown, no last-minute revelation. Just a gradual return to normalcy with better rules and better people in charge. Sometimes that's the best victory possible. Not destruction, but improvement. Not revenge, but justice. Not chaos, but peace. And in my little corner of Phoenix, Arizona, in a neighborhood called Suncrest Meadows, one storage unit stood as a monument to those principles. It was just a beige building in a beige neighborhood, but it meant something. It meant standing up for yourself matters. It meant bullies don't always win. It meant home ownership includes the right to actually own your home. I finished my beer, went inside, and started planning my next camping trip. The gear was waiting in my storage unit, right where I'd left it, exactly where it belonged. And that, after everything, felt perfect.